world is going through an incredibly complex set of problems right now. Probably never happened in the history of the planet before. Every generation thinks this is really tough, but I think we really have a tough time right now in many domains, in natural environment, ecosystem services, population growth, consumption of resources, you name it. And everywhere you look, things are beginning to break down, and all of us are impacted, whether we're rich or poor. The fact is that in some way or other our lives are diminished because of many of these issues. It seems to me that the globe, the communities of the world are going to have to get together and be able to change the direction in which we're going. The rich, of course, have a very large part of the responsibility, because they have in fact been able over the last 2 centuries to really overutilize some of the very valuable resources of our planet, particularly energy, water, material resources, and so on. The poor are often the victims of the degradation of the environment, but it's often not considered politically convenient to say that they also cause environmental damage, but in fact they do, simply out of the exigencies of survival. They have no choice but to feed themselves and their children. They need fuel wood, they need food, they need to be able to sustain their homes and so on. So, in fact, both extreme wealth, extreme affluence, and extreme poverty are really major threats to the quality of our lives across the world. And in a sense, this is a very important argument, I think, because you can proselytize all you want. You can go around the world preaching morality and an ethical behavior system. You can tell people to be good, but that's not going to happen very easily. I think you might have an impact on 1, 2, 5% of the people, but a large part of humanity goes and is driven by self-interest. Sometimes we call it enlightened self-interest, but it's self-interest. I think the issues of immediate and radical improvement in the lives of people is right at the top of my list of things to do. That means, in the case of the rich, who are now suffering from major disturbances in their psychosocial systems and alienation and violence and all kinds of other things, for them to start learning to live in harmony with the world, the nature, and all that's around them, but the poor to be able to improve their lives also as soon as possible, so that they can all converge to a level where life is good, life is healthy, life is fulfilling and satisfying, and what the Bhutanese call happy. These are, I think, immediate things that we have to do. Now, in that system, there are all kinds of subsystems that we have to deal with. How do we set up our financing systems to be much less predatory, for example? Today, a very large part of the economy of the world derives from money making money, not anything to do with the real lives of people. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make any sense to either the rich or the poor, except that the rich get a little bit extra for a while, but then they pay the costs later on, particularly in the lives of their children, maybe in their own lives. I think we've got to now understand that the substance of what we're dealing with here, the threats to our well-being, are now beginning to become headline material. I mean, the UN has had 5 or 6 summits, all of them on environmental issues, climate change, biodiversity, issues of consumption patterns, and so on. So these are big issues that the public knows about, but they're not able to do much about because they haven't been able to understand how the changes in their lives can be had while making them better. Everybody perceives the changes as being losing propositions, in some way sacrifices, in ways which will diminish their lives. And I think we've got to figure out ways to demonstrate that that is not so.
I think one thing I'd like to ask, how do you see this process, what's going on here, what Bhutan is doing? How can that add to this change that we need to see in the world?
Well, I am a great admirer of the gesture and the commitment that Bhutan has made towards changing the paradigms under which we guide our lives. This is something that very few nations could have done. I think Bhutan has certain advantages. It's got a religious tradition that is in tune with what it's preaching. It has a small country which is compact and able to communicate well with each other. It has a leadership, an unbelievably enlightened leadership that has been able to mobilize these kinds of issues. And I think they're the ideal champions for taking this set of thinking and thoughts into the global arena. So I'm all for it, and I would do everything to support it. I do think that what we need to do is first be a little more understanding of the political realities. How do you bring about change? How do you get people to actually institute? Bhutan has a very, very great advantage, a comparative advantage that I don't think any other country has, of being bringing a purity of thinking and a very, very strong commitment to this debate. I would like them to certainly realize in the long run that their own commitments, which are to a life in harmony with Mother Earth, to be the central focus. There's no question about that. But right now, what we need is to deliver results in that direction. Now, the world consists of lots of different constituencies, but the two important ones are the leaders, the political leaders, the corporate leaders, the civil society leaders, the people who shape and influence thinking and policy, and then the people. Now, I think the two are very closely related. The leaders can help educate people, but it's the people who will force the pace. And I think our job as people who are really at the frontier of this area of work, and also communicators like yourself, our job basically is to get people worked up about how unacceptable the present directions are. So I believe that Bhutan's very specially placed. It needs all the support it can get from the various constituencies, particularly the academics who are doing a valiant job of explaining things, and also the issues and the people involved in politics.